Lisa Harrison felt a different kind of exhaustion as she rested her purse at the entrance to the kitchen. The walls of the apartment in Austin seemed to echo an uncomfortable silence as she looked out the window at the rain, which made the atmosphere even more melancholic. She was expecting the warm voice of her husband, Ethan, to emerge from the living room at any moment, but today he was late. Earlier that morning, while having coffee with her best friend, Jessica Miller, Lisa had expressed her frustration about work and how she and Ethan had been distant lately. "He comes home and barely talks. He just stays on his phone or watches TV. It's like, he's tired of me," Lisa said, staring at her now cold cappuccino. Jessica, with an empathetic smile, lightly touched her shoulder. "Lisa, men are like that. Give him some space, and you'll see he'll come around," she said, trying to comfort her. Jessica was her rock, always willing to listen, always supportive. That night, when Ethan finally came home, Lisa noticed something different. He had an unshaven beard, and his eyes held a sort of weariness she didn't recognize. "You're late," Lisa commented, hiding her discomfort behind a smile. "The traffic was awful," Ethan replied dryly before heading straight to the bathroom. Lisa and Ethan's relationship had begun like a fairy tale. They met in college, where he was studying law and she was majoring in psychology. He had charmed her with his intelligence and sharp wit, and she had always admired his determination. But in recent months, the small things that used to go unnoticed, like his phone constantly being face down or the smiles he gave to messages she couldn't see, began to bother her. Lisa tried to dismiss her thoughts, pushing away her insecurities as if they were annoying flies. When Ethan emerged from the shower, she had already prepared a light dinner. "Do you want to talk about what happened today?" she risked, knowing he hated discussing work. He just shook his head, muttering something like, "It's nothing." After finishing dinner, Ethan retreated to his office, saying he needed to review a case. Lisa, left alone, looked at her phone, wanting to call Jessica. She wanted to talk about how lost she felt but decided to wait. "She also deserves a break from my complicated life," she thought. So, Lisa opted to try to sleep. In the days that followed, Lisa began to notice more signs that something was wrong. Jessica was always busy when Lisa called, which was unusual for her best friend. On the other hand, Ethan seemed increasingly evasive. One night, while Ethan claimed to be at a last-minute meeting, Lisa decided to watch a movie to distract her mind. However, a strange unease took over her, an uncomfortable feeling she couldn't shake. On a Friday, Lisa decided to leave work early. She planned to surprise Ethan by preparing his favorite dish. She knew he would leave the office at 6, so she planned to be ready to greet him with a special dinner and red wine, just the way he liked it. When she arrived home, she was surprised to see that the light in Ethan's office was on. Maybe he came home early, she thought, smiling to herself. But when she opened the office door, the smile disappeared. Ethan's phone was on the desk, with a message still visible. "Jessica, let me know when she's asleep. I need to see you." Lisa felt the ground fall from under her feet. She left Ethan's phone where it was, as if touching it would confirm a nightmare. Her head was spinning, and she didn't know how to react. Every piece of the puzzle she had been ignoring now fit together, forming a cruel picture. Ethan and Jessica, her best friend. A mix of anger and betrayal rose in her throat, but she swallowed the tears, fighting against the pain tightening her chest. She took a deep breath and walked slowly to the bedroom. She needed to think. She didn't want to confront them without proof. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe it was just a misunderstanding, she told herself, trying to calm down. But deep down, Lisa knew she couldn't ignore what her eyes had seen. Lisa's mind was in turmoil, and the feeling of betrayal was like a knife lodged deep in her chest. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the messages flashing on Ethan's phone screen, and the pain grew along with her suspicions. She got up early, before Ethan woke up, and prepared breakfast mechanically, not knowing how to act. When Ethan appeared in the kitchen, still in his robe, Lisa watched him carefully. He smiled as if nothing was wrong, grabbing a mug of coffee. "Did you sleep well?" he asked, his voice sounding distant. Lisa felt a lump form in her throat but forced a smile. "Yes, I did," she lied. Ethan didn't seem to notice anything, simply taking his mug and heading to his office. While he was in the shower, Lisa grabbed his phone, her hands trembling. There was an impulse she couldn't control, a desperate need to know more. She wasn't one to snoop through Ethan's things, but at that moment, something stronger than her sense of morality pushed her forward. In the message history, she saw several conversations with Jessica. Most seemed harmless, about casual meetups or jokes, but some were laden with innuendo, as if there were a hidden code only the two of them understood. One message, in particular, caught her attention. "Tonight, 7 p.m. Can't wait to see you." Lisa dropped Ethan's phone on the table, her heart racing. She needed a plan. She didn't want to act impulsively and turn suspicion into a scandal, but she also couldn't just stand by. With shaking fingers, she picked up her own phone and sent a quick message to Jessica. "Can we meet for coffee? I need to vent." Jessica took a while to respond, which only increased Lisa's anxiety. When the response finally came, it read, "I can't today, I have commitments." "How about tomorrow?" Lisa knew that was a lie. Jessica would never refuse a meeting for venting before. She always said Lisa could count on her any time. Commitments, Lisa thought, and the word seemed more like a rehearsed excuse. There were few doubts left now. That afternoon, when Ethan left saying he had a meeting, Lisa decided to follow her instincts. She waited a few minutes before grabbing her keys and discreetly heading out. She didn't know exactly where she was going, just drove with her phone in hand, feeling like an amateur detective, driven by desperation. Ethan's car was parked outside a restaurant on the outskirts of the city, a discreet place where they used to go on birthdays and special occasions. Lisa parked her car on the corner and turned off the lights, watching from a distance. She tried to calm her breathing, but her heart felt ready to explode with anxiety. After a few minutes, she saw Jessica arrive, wearing a red dress that Lisa had helped her choose weeks ago. "You snake," Lisa muttered, feeling the blood boil in her veins. When Ethan came out of his car and greeted Jessica with an intimate hug, something inside Lisa shattered. Tears welled up in her eyes, and a sense of panic swept over her body. She wanted to get out of the car and scream, confront them right there, but her legs were paralyzed. The two of them entered the restaurant, leaving Lisa alone, trapped between the urge to act and the fear of discovering the truth definitively. Back in her car, Lisa took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. She needed a plan, a way to expose the betrayal without destroying herself in the process. She thought about confronting them in the restaurant, but realized she needed to be in control, to be cold and rational. "I need proof," she decided, even though the pain inside her was growing like a tumor. She picked up her phone and called her mother, the only person who could provide some comfort in this situation. "Mom, can I come to your house? I need to talk," she said, her voice breaking. Lisa's mother, always perceptive, simply replied, "Of course, sweetheart. I'm waiting for you." Lisa left the parking lot and drove to her mother's house, trying to calm down. Along the way, she remembered every conversation with Jessica, every moment she had blindly trusted Ethan, and now felt like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier. When she arrived at her mother's house, Lisa was greeted with a tight hug. "What happened, my daughter?" her mother asked, but Lisa couldn't speak immediately. She just cried silently, feeling safe in her mother's arms. When she finally could, she told her everything, from the suspicious message to the encounter at the restaurant. "Are you sure?" her mother asked, trying not to judge without proof. "Yes, Mom. I saw it with my own eyes," Lisa said, wiping her tears. There was anger in her voice, but also a deep exhaustion. "And now? What are you going to do?" her mother asked. Lisa took a deep breath, wiping her face. "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. And when I'm sure, they'll pay for this." Lisa spent the rest of the day at her mother's house, trying to clear her mind. There was a tense silence between them, a mutual understanding that something big was about to happen. Her mother advised her to act cautiously, avoiding an impulsive outburst that could have irreversible consequences. Lisa knew she needed to be strategic. If she confronted Ethan and Jessica without solid evidence, she could easily be manipulated into believing it was all a misunderstanding. On her way back home, Lisa reflected on her mother's words. She decided that the only way to be sure and prepare herself for the confrontation was to monitor Ethan and Jessica's steps. But how? Without any experience in this, Lisa thought about giving up for a moment until she remembered a conversation with a work friend, Rebecca, who always bragged about how she discovered her ex-husband's affairs. "I hired a private investigator, and that ended all my doubts," Rebecca had said once. As soon as she got home, Lisa went to the bedroom and called Rebecca, disguising her nervous voice. "Rebecca, can you give me the contact of that private investigator you mentioned once?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Rebecca hesitated for a moment. "Lisa, why do you need this?" she asked, concerned. Lisa closed her eyes, taking a deep breath. "It's complicated, Rebecca. I just need this right now." Rebecca agreed and sent the investigator's contact. His name was Carl Henderson, an ex-cop from Dallas known for being discreet and efficient. Lisa saved the number on her phone, feeling a mix of relief and nervousness. She didn't want to believe her life had come to this point, but she couldn't ignore what was happening anymore. The next morning, Lisa prepared to leave the house with Ethan, pretending everything was normal. He was distracted, talking about a supposedly complicated case he had to deal with at work, but Lisa barely listened. Instead, she just smiled and nodded, trying to control the urge to shout the truth in his face. "I'm going to have lunch with Jessica today," Ethan said casually, while adjusting his tie. Lisa felt a chill down her spine but kept her composure. "Oh, really?" she responded, trying to sound disinterested. "Yeah, just to catch up," he explained, not noticing the tension in Lisa's eyes. When Ethan left, Lisa picked up her phone and called Carl Henderson. "I need help," she said directly. Carl, on the other end of the line, seemed experienced enough to understand the urgency in her voice. "I can help you, Mrs. Harrison. But you need to tell me what you want to find out," Carl responded. Lisa hesitated for a moment, struggling to say the words out loud. "I think my husband is cheating on me with my best friend," she admitted, and the pain in her voice was evident. Carl remained silent for a few seconds before replying. "All right. I'll need some information about them. Addresses, schedules, and anything else that might help me follow them without drawing attention." Lisa provided all the necessary information, and Carl promised to start the investigation immediately. She hung up the phone, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders but also a lingering guilt for taking things this far. Deep down, there was still a small part of her that hoped she was wrong, that it was all just a terrible misunderstanding. In the following days, Carl sent periodic updates to Lisa. Photos of Ethan and Jessica having lunch together, laughing at something she couldn't hear. Images of them leaving a restaurant and going to a hotel downtown. Each new photo was like a stab to Lisa's heart, but she knew she had to keep going. The detective was still gathering more evidence, trying to document something definitive that could not be disputed. On a Friday, Carl arranged a meeting with Lisa to hand over all the evidence he had gathered. They met at a discreet cafe on a quiet street. Lisa arrived early, her hands trembling as she fiddled with her coffee cup without really drinking it. When Carl entered, carrying a folder, her heart almost stopped. "I have everything you need," Carl said, passing the folder to Lisa. Inside, there were printed photos, recordings of conversations Ethan and Jessica had over phone calls, and even videos of them entering a hotel room together. Lisa flipped through the evidence, her eyes fixed on each image as if trying to burn them into her mind. It was official. Ethan and Jessica were having an affair. Carl watched in silence, waiting for her to process everything. When Lisa finally raised her eyes, tears were streaming down, but there was also a look of determination. "What are you going to do now, Mrs. Harrison?" Carl asked, genuinely curious. Lisa took a deep breath, feeling her mind clear. "I'm not going to confront them yet," she replied, surprising even herself. "First, I'm going to prepare. When I do, I don't want there to be any doubt. I want them to know they destroyed everything and can't manipulate me." Carl nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. "If you need anything else, I'll be around," he said before saying goodbye and leaving. Lisa stayed there for a few more minutes, trying to absorb the impact of the betrayal. Part of her still felt broken, betrayed by the two people she trusted most, but another part was beginning to emerge, a part of herself that didn't see herself as a victim, but as someone determined to rise and face it head-on. She picked up her phone and typed a message to Ethan. "Tonight, let's have dinner together. I want to talk." Ethan replied with a simple, "Okay," with no suspicion. Lisa knew that the Real storm was yet to come, and this time, she was ready to face it. That night, as Lisa set the table for dinner, the air in the house felt heavy with a tension that only she could sense. She had decorated the table as if it were a special occasion, lighting candles and opening an expensive bottle of red wine. Ethan always appreciated these small surprises, but this time, Lisa wasn't doing it to please him. It was part of her plan. When Ethan arrived, he seemed surprised to see the table set. "What are we celebrating?" he asked, a light smile on his face. Lisa, masking her nervousness, smiled back. "Nothing special, I just wanted to spend some time together," she replied, keeping her voice steady. As Ethan poured himself some wine, Lisa tried to control her breathing. She knew that this conversation would change their lives forever. Dinner began with casual conversation about trivial work matters and weekend plans. Ethan seemed relaxed, and the confidence he exuded only fueled Lisa's anger. He was so comfortable in his lie, unaware that every word he spoke was being carefully analyzed. Finally, after a few minutes of silence, Lisa took a deep breath and looked Ethan directly in the eyes. "I need to talk to you about something serious," she began. Ethan, sensing the tone in her voice, put down his fork and leaned slightly forward, concerned. "What is it?" he asked, visibly trying to understand what was about to happen. "It's about us," Lisa said, trying to keep her gaze steady. "Lately, I've been feeling like something is wrong between us, and I wanted to understand what's going on." Ethan watched her for a moment, seemingly measuring his words before responding. "Lisa, I know I've been distant. It's work, it's been really stressful," he said, using the same calm and reassuring tone he always used when trying to downplay his problems. But this time, Lisa wasn't interested in excuses. She took a deep breath and decided to push forward. "Ethan, are you cheating on me?" she asked, feeling her heart nearly leap out of her chest. The room fell silent, and the sound of the candles flickering seemed amplified. Ethan sat still, his face immediately taking on a defensive expression. "What? Of course not," he replied, his voice rising slightly, as if offended by the mere question. "Lisa, where is this coming from?" He forced a nervous laugh, but Lisa noticed the sweat beginning to form on his forehead. "Please don't insult me," Lisa continued, ignoring his reaction. "I saw the messages," she said, ignoring his attempt at laughter. "I saw you scheduling meetups with Jessica. I saw you go out with her last night. And before you deny it, I have proof," she said, her voice cold and filled with a determination that surprised even herself. She was no longer nervous. She was resolute. Ethan remained silent, his mouth opening and closing as if he was trying to find words. Finally, he spoke. "Lisa, it's not what you think. Jessica and we're just friends. You know that." His voice sounded desperate, but Lisa knew it was just another attempt at manipulation. "Friends?" Lisa laughed, a hollow and contemptuous sound. "Then why did you take her to a hotel? Why did you lie to me so many times?" she asked, her voice now trembling with anger. Ethan tried to reach out to her, but she raised her hand, asking him to stay where he was. I gave you so many chances to be honest, Ethan. I did everything to believe in you, to ignore all the signs," she continued, her voice growing stronger. "But you chose to lie. And the worst part, you chose my best friend." "Lisa, please listen to me," Ethan began, but she cut him off. "There's nothing left to say," Lisa said, taking out the folder she had hidden under the table and throwing it in front of him. Ethan looked at the folder as if it were a bomb about to go off. When he opened it, his hands shook as he saw the photos and heard the recordings that Carl Henderson had collected. His expression shifted from desperation to resignation, and he no longer tried to justify himself. I don't know what to say," Ethan whispered, finally admitting his guilt without words. "I messed up everything." Lisa felt a burning anger inside her, but also a strange sense of relief. She had finally heard what she needed. "Yes, you did," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "And now you need to leave." Ethan looked at her, shocked. "Lisa, wait. Can't we work this out? I know I screwed up, but nothing," Lisa shouted, her anger finally escaping. "I trusted you, Ethan. You were my husband, my partner. And you broke that trust in the worst way possible." She stood up from the table, unable to stay in the same room as him any longer. Ethan tried to approach her, but Lisa stopped him. "Take your things and go," she said, her voice broken but determined. "We're done." Ethan stood there for a few seconds, as if he couldn't believe this was happening. Then, without saying another word, he left the room. Lisa heard him hurriedly grab a few things and, finally, the front door closing as he left. The house, which once felt like a home, now felt cold and strange. Lisa sat down on the couch, feeling the weight of the situation settle over her. She had finally freed herself from the lie, but the pain of knowing she had lost both her husband and her best friend at once was overwhelming. As she stared at the emptiness of the room, she thought about Jessica, her friend of so many years, and felt a new wave of anger rise. Lisa knew it wasn't over yet. Jessica couldn't walk away unscathed. She needed to face the best friend who betrayed her trust. And this time, she would be more prepared than ever. Confronting Ethan had been painful, but for Lisa, the hardest chapter was yet to come. In the days that followed, she avoided any contact with him and started packing up the apartment. As she boxed up Ethan's belongings, memories and resentment flooded her mind. Determined to move forward, Lisa mentally prepared herself for the next step. Jessica. Facing her best friend would be different. Jessica had not only betrayed her trust but had also blatantly lied while pretending to support her. Lisa felt a mix of pain and indignation, emotions that propelled her to act decisively. She wouldn't be the victim in this story. One Wednesday, Lisa decided it was time. Jessica usually visited a cafe in downtown Austin every Wednesday after work. It was her relaxation time before heading home. Lisa knew this because the two of them used to meet there before everything changed. This time, however, things would be different. That afternoon, Lisa dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that gave her confidence and leaving her hair down the way Jessica always complimented. The irony wasn't lost on her. She arrived at the cafe early and sat at a discreet table, where she could observe the entrance without being immediately noticed. A few minutes later, Jessica walked in, as expected, wearing a simple black dress and heels, as if she were preparing for something beyond a casual coffee. Jessica ordered her usual cappuccino and sat near the window, seemingly unbothered. Lisa stood up, took a deep breath, and walked towards the table. Her heart raced, but her determination was stronger. When Jessica saw her approaching, an automatic smile appeared on her face, quickly followed by an expression of surprise. "Lisa, what a surprise to see you here," Jessica said, forcing a welcoming smile. Lisa stopped beside the table and observed her for a second before responding. "Surprise? I think that's the right word," Lisa said, her voice calm but loaded with subtext. Jessica seemed to hesitate for a moment, probably trying to gauge Lisa's tone. "Can I sit?" Lisa asked, already pulling out the chair before Jessica could respond. Of course, Jessica mumbled, trying to maintain her composure. As Lisa sat down, Jessica picked up her cappuccino, clearly uncomfortable. "How have you been?" she asked, her voice slightly shaky. "I'm fine," Lisa replied, her gaze fixed on Jessica. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about Ethan." Jessica, who was about to take a sip of her coffee, froze. "Ethan? What happened to him?" she asked, her expression trying to appear casual, but Lisa noticed the flicker of worry in her eyes. It was as if Jessica knew something big was about to be revealed. Lisa leaned slightly forward, keeping her voice low but firm. "I know about the two of you, Jessica. I know about the affair," she said bluntly. The color drained from Jessica's face, and she remained motionless, her cup still in her hands. "Lisa, I don't know what you're talking about," Jessica stuttered, her voice wavering. She tried to smile, but it came off as pathetic. "Please, don't play me for a fool," Lisa retorted, cutting through the pretense. She pulled some photos from her bag and placed them on the table, sliding them towards Jessica. The images showed Jessica and Ethan leaving the hotel, holding hands. "I have proof. So, please stop with the lies." Jessica looked at the photos, her expression shifting from shock to despair. She opened her mouth several times, but no words came out. Lisa's heart was pounding, but she couldn't show hesitation. She needed to stay in control. "You were my best friend," Lisa continued, her voice beginning to shake with anger. "I trusted you. I told you everything about my marriage, about my insecurities, and the whole time you were betraying me in the worst way possible." Jessica finally found her voice. "Lisa, listen to me. I can explain," she began, but Lisa cut her off. "Explain? You want to explain how you decided to sleep with my husband?" Lisa nearly spat the words, her anger overflowing. People at nearby tables started to notice the raised voices, but Lisa no longer cared. Jessica lowered her head, tears beginning to well up. "I didn't plan this. It was a mistake, something that got out of control," she said, her voice trembling. I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," Lisa shouted, slamming her hand on the table and causing Jessica's cappuccino to shake. "You lied to me, manipulated every moment of our conversations, pretended to be my friend while stabbing me in the back." Jessica was now crying openly, unable to maintain the facade. She tried to reach out to Lisa, but Lisa pulled back, recoiling as if Jessica's touch were venomous. "I know I made a mistake, but Ethan. He told me your marriage was falling apart, that you didn't love him anymore," Jessica confessed, sobbing between words. "I was an idiot to believe him, and I got involved." Lisa felt a tightness in her chest hearing those words. Ethan had lied to her and manipulated Jessica as well. But that didn't lessen Jessica's betrayal. Lisa looked at her, trying to find a trace of the person she once knew and trusted for so many years, but all she saw was a stranger. "You won't use that as an excuse," Lisa said firmly. "You made a choice, Jessica. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now you have to live with it." She stood up, pushing the chair back. "Our friendship is over. I hope you and Ethan are happy together. Or at least that you stay far away from me." Jessica tried to stand, her voice pleading. "Lisa, please, forgive me. Let me fix this," she begged, but Lisa remained resolute. "You destroyed everything, Jessica." "There's no fixing it," Lisa replied coldly. "Don't contact me again." Lisa walked away, leaving Jessica crumbling at the table. The people around started whispering, but Lisa didn't care. She felt strangely relieved, as if she had left behind a huge weight. But at the same time, there was a deep sadness in her heart. The two most important people in her life had betrayed her, and now she had to rebuild her path alone. As she walked to her car, Lisa stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky, the clouds starting to clear. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she was in control. Jessica and Ethan were out of her life, but the wounds they left still needed to heal. She got into her car, picked up her phone, and sent a message to Carl Henderson, the detective. "I did what I needed to. Thank you for everything. If I need anything else, I'll reach out." And as she put the phone down, Lisa knew her next step would be finding a way to start over. Alone, but stronger than before. The days following the confrontations were a mix of relief and sadness for Lisa. She felt free from a devastating lie, but at the same time, the pain of the betrayals lingered in her mind. Ethan had left the house shortly after their confrontation, leaving behind a few clothes and an uncomfortable emptiness in every room. Now, without him and without Jessica, Lisa found herself in a quiet, empty reality. The only thing keeping her on her feet was her determination to move forward, to prove to herself that she could overcome this. Determined not to be swallowed by grief, Lisa began to make a mental list of everything she needed to organize. The first task was the divorce. She knew that Ethan wouldn't make the process difficult. After all, he was the guilty party, and both of them wanted to move on. She hired a lawyer and decided to be direct, avoiding any unnecessary contact with Ethan. The following days were filled with meetings with the lawyer, reviewing documents, and formal discussions about the division of assets. One afternoon, while reviewing the divorce papers, Lisa received an unexpected message. It was from Jessica. "Lisa, I know you don't want to talk to me anymore, but I need to try to apologize. Please, meet me one last time. It's important." Lisa stared at the message for a long time, torn between the desire to end everything once and for all and the anger at having to see Jessica again. In the end, she chose not to respond. Jessica was no longer a part of her life, and for Lisa, reliving the betrayal felt like reopening a wound that was still far from healed. She deleted the message and forced herself to focus on the documents in front of her. That night, Lisa lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, the house was truly empty. There were no more sounds of Ethan walking back and forth, or Jessica's constant calls appearing on her phone screen. Lisa was alone. And this solitude, though frightening, was also an opportunity to reconnect with herself. In the following days, Lisa began to focus on her career. She decided to accept a promotion she had been putting off for months, afraid of not having time to balance work and her marriage. Now, without that concern, she embraced the challenge. The extra hours of work served as a distraction, and she threw herself into the tasks with renewed energy. However, even with her mind occupied, Lisa knew she needed to confront her own feelings. The pain of the betrayal couldn't be buried along with her marriage. So, she made an important decision: to seek professional help. She booked a session with a renowned therapist, Dr. Samuel Carter, an older man with a calm voice that quickly put her at ease. In the first session, Lisa sat in front of Samuel, her hands restless in her lap. "I don't know where to start," she said, her voice hesitant. Samuel smiled empathetically. "Start with what's bothering you the most right now," he suggested, and Lisa felt the barriers she had built begin to dissolve. "I was betrayed by my husband, and by my best friend," Lisa began, and the words came out with difficulty. Over the next few minutes, she poured out everything, from her initial suspicions to the final confrontations. Samuel listened attentively, without interrupting, letting her release all the pent-up pain. "And how do you feel now, after making all these decisions?" Samuel asked once she had finished. "I feel lost," Lisa admitted, her voice low. "I got rid of those who hurt me, but I don't know who I am without them. Without the life I thought was mine." Lisa looked down at her hands, feeling a mixture of relief and despair at finally admitting it out loud. Samuel nodded slowly. "When we build our lives around other people, we end up losing a bit of who we are individually. It's natural to feel like this after a great loss," he explained, with the same comforting calm. "But now, Lisa, it's time to rediscover yourself. To ask yourself what you want, not what was expected of you." The sessions with Samuel became a refuge for Lisa. She began to explore issues she had ignored for years, like her insecurities and fear of being alone. Over time, she started to see the divorce and the separation from Jessica as a new beginning, not a failure. But she also knew she couldn't just erase those years of her life. During one session, Samuel suggested something that made Lisa reflect deeply. Perhaps, before completely closing this chapter, you need a kind of closure for yourself, he said. Something that allows you to forgive, not them, but yourself, for trusting the wrong people. The idea of closure struck a chord with Lisa. She had cut off contact with Ethan and Jessica, but she knew there were still unresolved feelings. In the following days, she wrote several letters, venting her emotions. But in the end, she decided she needed one last conversation, even if it was painful, to move forward. One morning, while going through her old contacts, Lisa decided to call Ethan. He answered on the second ring, his voice surprised and cautious. "Lisa," he said, as if he couldn't believe she was actually calling. "We need to talk," Lisa said firmly. "I want closure on all of this. Can you meet me tonight at Zilker Park?" Ethan hesitated for a moment but agreed. Later, Lisa was sitting on a bench at Zilker Park, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and red. Ethan arrived a few minutes later, looking more worn than the last time they had seen each other. He sat next to her, not knowing what to say. For a moment, both remained silent, listening to the distant sound of children playing and dogs running across the grass. "Why did you do it?" Lisa asked, her voice calm but heavy with pain. "Why did you betray me?" Ethan looked at her, his expression somber. I really don't know," he replied, and his voice sounded sincere. "It was one mistake after another. I felt trapped, and instead of talking to you, I chose the easy way out." "Easy," Lisa repeated, her voice filled with bitterness. "You destroyed what we had for something easy?" Ethan sighed, running his hand through his hair. "I know I ruined everything. I can't justify what I did. All I can say is that I was weak and selfish." There was genuine sadness in his eyes, but that didn't lessen Lisa's pain. "I don't want you to apologize," Lisa said, her voice steady. "I want you to know that I'm moving on. That despite everything, I'm going to pick myself up." Ethan nodded, seeming relieved to hear that. "I hope you find happiness, Lisa," he said, and for the first time, he seemed genuinely sincere. "I will," Lisa responded, determined. And with that, she stood up and walked away without looking back. That night, when she returned home, Lisa felt that she had closed a cycle. Ethan and Jessica were part of a painful chapter in her life, but now she was ready to turn the page. There was a long road to recovery ahead, but for the first time, she felt she had the strength to walk it alone. Lisa woke up that morning with a strange feeling of lightness. The final conversation with Ethan at Zilker Park had given her a sense of closure she hadn't expected. For the first time in weeks, the pain had made way for a renewed sense of freedom. As she looked out of her bedroom window, the sun shone with a comforting intensity, as if the universe was trying to tell her that this was the start of something new. While having her morning coffee, Lisa picked up an old notebook where she used to jot down her goals and dreams. She flipped through the pages, filled with unfulfilled wishes, and felt a wave of nostalgia mixed with sadness. Inside, there were lists of places she wanted to visit, courses she planned to take, and projects she had dreamed of starting, all of which had been set aside for Ethan's priorities and Jessica's social demands. She then made a decision. She would do something for herself. Something she had always wanted but never had the courage to pursue. Lisa signed up for a photography course, something she had loved since she was young but had let go of over the years. The classes were 3 evenings a week, and for the first time in a long time, she felt genuine excitement about learning something new and doing something solely for herself. On her first night of the photography class, Lisa arrived early and sat at one of the front tables, trying to hide her nervousness. The room began to fill with people of different ages and styles, all looking just as anxious as she was. The instructor, a man in his 40s named Mark, was charismatic and experienced, and as soon as he started the class, he managed to break the ice with a simple joke. "Photography is about capturing moments that speak for themselves," he said. "But it's also a personal journey. The pictures we take reflect our emotions, our stories, and sometimes, our wounds." Those words resonated deeply with Lisa. She knew she was carrying many wounds, but perhaps, through photography, she could find a way to express them and, in a way, heal them. At the end of the class, Mark approached Lisa and made a casual comment about her genuine interest in the technical explanations. "You seem like someone who really wants to understand how it all works, not just take good pictures," he said, smiling. Lisa, who had always been detail-oriented, felt flattered. It was nice to be recognized for something unrelated to the failure of her marriage. As the weeks passed, Lisa began to establish new routines and make small changes that, little by little, revitalized her life. She became closer to some of the people in the class, starting to go out with them to take photos in parks, city streets, and local events. Lisa found herself forming new bonds, rebuilding her circle of friends based on her own interests, no longer as an extension of Ethan's life or as a result of Jessica's demands. One of the people Lisa met in the class was Grace, a woman in her 30s with a vibrant spirit and a sharp sense of humor. Grace was divorced and spoke openly about the end of her marriage without clinging to the weight of guilt or pain. Lisa soon found herself confiding in Grace about her own experience, and Grace, with a touch of dark humor, simply said, "Welcome to the Survivors Club." The phrase, although said lightly, stuck in Lisa's mind. She was surviving, but she also began to realize there was more beyond that. There was the possibility of living fully, independently of the ghosts of the past. One day, Grace suggested a weekend photo trip to Marfa, a city in West Texas known for its desert landscapes and artistic scenes. "Let's get out of Austin and see something different," Grace said excitedly. Lisa hesitated for a moment but eventually agreed. It was something she needed to do. Leave the city, breathe new air, and create new memories. When they arrived in Marfa, Lisa was struck by the vastness of the desert. It felt like she was in a completely different place from what she was used to, a place where she could be anyone, without the weight of old expectations. She took numerous photos, capturing the wide-open sky and rock formations, but also more intimate moments. Grace's shadow on the stones, the reflection of a lone flower in a rain puddle. On their last night of the trip, the two of them sat around an improvised campfire, talking about life. Grace spoke about how she decided to start over after the divorce, about the ups and downs of being single and having to find herself again. Lisa listened intently, feeling a connection to Grace's story. "When my ex left, I thought I had lost everything," Grace said, her voice calm as she stared at the flames. "But eventually, I realized what I had lost was just what I thought was my life. What I needed to find was who I really was, without all the other distractions." Lisa remained silent, reflecting on those words. She knew she still had a lot to discover about herself, but the trip had been a big step. She had begun photographing again, made new friends, and experienced moments of peace amid the internal chaos. And for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful about the future. Back in Austin, Lisa decided to do something symbolic. She took out her old goal notebook and flipped through the pages one more time. With a black pen, she began to cross out goals that no longer made sense or were tied to painful memories. Instead, she wrote new goals, trips she wanted to take alone, courses she wanted to complete, projects she wanted to start. And on the last page, she wrote a simple phrase, "Be myself in all circumstances." Over time, Lisa realized that her healing process didn't involve forgetting the past but accepting it as part of her story. She knew she could never completely erase what had happened with Ethan and Jessica, but she could use it as a reminder of her strength and resilience. That night, as she turned off her bedroom light and lay down, Lisa didn't feel alone. She felt whole. The photography exhibition marked a significant turning point in Lisa's life. In the following days, she received messages of support and even compliments from strangers who connected with her photos and their stories. But more importantly, she felt a deep internal shift. For the first time, her pain had turned into something tangible, and by doing so, she managed to let go of it. Lisa was now diving into new opportunities and challenges. Her dedication to photography caught the attention of a local newspaper in Austin, which invited her to create a series of photos documenting the stories of city residents. The proposal excited her immediately. It combined her passion for storytelling with her new love for photography, and it offered her an opportunity to connect with the community and explore something beyond her own feelings. In the first week of the project, Lisa was assigned to photograph an old neighborhood undergoing gentrification. The aim was to capture the essence of the people still resisting the changes and preserve their stories through images. It was a challenging project, but Lisa embraced it with enthusiasm, determined to make it meaningful. Amid this new phase, someone unexpected entered her life. While photographing in the neighborhood one afternoon, Lisa met Daniel, an architect involved in the local renovations. He was supervising the restoration of a historic building and seemed genuinely interested in her photography project. Daniel was friendly and appeared to understand the importance of preserving the area's history, which immediately caught Lisa's attention. The two began to cross paths often, and their conversations gradually deepened, from neighborhood changes to their careers and eventually their personal lives. One afternoon, as Lisa adjusted her camera to photograph an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood for over 40 years, Daniel approached with a smile. "You really capture the soul of people," he commented, watching Lisa frame the shot. She smiled in response, appreciating the compliment. "I just try to let them tell their own stories," Lisa replied, stepping back to review the images on her camera screen. "And you do that very well," Daniel responded sincerely. Lisa felt a rare blush creep up, but she quickly shifted her focus back to the task. She had spent so much time closed off to new connections that she was unprepared for the lightness Daniel brought. No expectations, just genuine interest. At the end of the long day of photography, Daniel suggested they grab a coffee at a nearby cafe. Lisa hesitated at first, but then agreed. She sensed that there was something worth exploring in this budding friendship, and she was ready to allow herself this new experience. In the cafe, as they sipped their drinks, Daniel asked about Lisa's photography exhibition. He had heard about it and was curious. "It sounds like it was quite an event," he said. Lisa chuckled, recalling the evening that felt like a distant memory now. "It was more of a closure than an exhibition," she replied honestly. "It was my way of letting go of something that was holding me back." Daniel nodded as if he completely understood what she meant. "I know what that's like," he said quietly. "Letting go of something is harder than most people think." Those words lingered with Lisa. She felt a genuine connection with Daniel, something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Their conversations deepened and became more personal. She learned that Daniel had also been through a complicated past. He had gone through a difficult divorce a few years ago, and starting over had changed him in many ways. Although their stories were different, there was an understanding of what it meant to rebuild and rediscover oneself after a major loss. Over time, the friendship between them grew stronger. They began to spend more time together, exploring new places around Austin. Lisa felt something blooming, but part of her was still afraid to open herself up to a new relationship. The trauma of the past was still there, and as much as she wanted to allow herself to be happy, a small voice in her head kept asking, "What if you get hurt again?" One evening, after another long day of photography in the neighborhood, Daniel and Lisa decided to visit the bar of an old hotel they had wanted to check out for weeks. As they sat down with their drinks, the atmosphere was different from their previous meetings. There was a tension in the air, but not the tension of unresolved conflicts. This was something else, an expectation, a moment where everything might change. Daniel, reading Lisa's thoughts, was the first to break the silence. "I know we haven't known each other for that long," he began, his voice steady, "but I feel like there's something between us. Something I can't ignore." Lisa held her glass tightly, his words echoing in her mind. She knew he was right. She felt the connection too, but she was torn between wanting to move forward and needing to protect herself. "Daniel, she began, but the words wouldn't come. Her voice faltered, and she looked down at her hands, fighting to keep her composure. Daniel leaned in slightly, his expression gentle. "You don't have to say anything now," he said softly. "I just wanted to be honest about what I'm feeling. And I want you to know that, whatever you decide, I'm here." Lisa looked at him, her eyes reflecting a mix of gratitude and uncertainty. She wasn't used to relationships that were based on space and patience, but Daniel was different. He was giving her room to be vulnerable without rushing her or imposing demands. "I just need time," Lisa finally said, feeling relieved to be honest with herself. Daniel nodded, not pushing her. There was a silent understanding between them that starting over wasn't just about them, but about giving space and time to heal. In the days that followed, Lisa continued her work on the photo project, but now with a sense of lightness in her heart. Her friendship with Daniel blossomed naturally, without pressure or expectations. It was a new phase of her life, a restart without haste, where each step was taken at her own pace. One afternoon, as Lisa reviewed her photos for the newspaper, she came across a candid image she had captured by accident. The shadows of two strangers walking side by side down a street, the sunlight casting their silhouettes in an intertwined shape. The photo seemed to speak to her in a way she couldn't quite explain, a reminder that life sometimes connects people unexpectedly and creates new stories. Lisa knew she still had a long way to go, but for the first time, she felt at peace with the pace of her journey. The fear of being hurt again still lingered, but she had learned not to let it define her choices. She was allowing herself to feel, to live, and to trust again, one step at a time. The following months were a period of transformation for Lisa. The photo project in the neighborhood ended successfully, earning praise and recognition from the local newspaper. She began receiving invitations to new projects, and her confidence as both a photographer and a person grew. But despite her career taking a positive turn, Lisa knew the real progress was happening within her. Her friendship with Daniel continued to develop, and Lisa started to open up little by little. They met regularly, sharing stories and enjoying simple moments, like impromptu dinners in the park or evening walks around the city. Daniel never pressured Lisa into anything, always respecting her time and insecurities. And that, in a way, was what made her feel safe around him. One night, after a long day at work, Lisa found herself alone in her apartment, organizing old photos. She came across images from her wedding with Ethan and moments shared with Jessica. In another time, these photos would have stirred up sadness and resentment, but now she viewed them differently. She placed some of them in a box and threw others away, but symbolically kept a few in a corner, a reminder of her journey. She didn't want to erase her past completely. Instead, she wanted to accept it as part of her story. Lisa decided to take a step she had been avoiding for a while, visiting her mother. They had always been close, but in recent months, Lisa had avoided talking about her feelings, trying to focus on her recovery alone. But now, she wanted to share her progress and, more importantly, feel the comfort of being with someone who had always believed in her. When she arrived at her mother's house, Lisa was welcomed with a warm hug. They sat in the kitchen, where so many important conversations had taken place, and Lisa finally opened up. She talked about the exhibition, her reconciliation with herself, and even about Daniel. "How do you feel about him?" her mother asked while preparing a cup of tea for both of them. Lisa hesitated before responding. "I feel good with him, Mom. It's different. I don't feel that pressure, you know," she explained, searching for the right words. "But at the same time, I'm still afraid of getting hurt again." Her mother smiled tenderly, taking Lisa's hands. "Honey, the fear of getting hurt will always be there, but it shouldn't be what stops you from moving forward. What matters is what you feel and what you're willing to risk for it." Lisa thought about her mother's words for the rest of the day. Deep down, she knew her mother was right. The fear was part of the new beginning, but it didn't have to be at the center of it. She returned home determined to face her feelings with more openness and honesty. A few weeks later, Lisa was invited to photograph a cultural event in Austin. It was an arts and music festival, and she was excited to document something so dynamic. While she was moving through the crowd, capturing moments and candid interactions, she noticed Daniel arriving. He had mentioned wanting to attend, but Lisa didn't expect him to actually show up, given that it was a busy Friday night and he was typically reserved about his personal time. "I didn't want to miss the chance to see you in action," Daniel said with a smile as he approached. Lisa smiled back, grateful for his presence. "I hope you don't mind if I keep working," she responded playfully. "Not at all," he replied, watching her as she adjusted the camera lens. Daniel was slowly becoming part of the genuine, everyday moments of Lisa's life, and that touched her deeply. When the event ended, the two walked together through the lit streets of Austin, where the music and lively conversations still echoed. Lisa sensed something unsaid lingering in the air, a tension different from what she had felt months ago. Now, it was an expectation of something about to change. They stopped on a small bridge overlooking the river, watching the lights reflected on the water. Daniel turned to Lisa, his expression serious but calm. "Lisa, you know I'm willing to wait as long as you need," he said, breaking the silence. "But I need to know how you feel." Lisa had known this moment would come, and although she still had doubts, she felt ready to be honest. "I'm scared, Daniel," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "Scared of getting hurt again, scared of trusting. But at the same time, I want to be close to you." Daniel listened intently, not interrupting her. Lisa continued, "You gave me time and space, and that's something no one has ever done before. And that's why I trust you. But I need you to be by my side, not just waiting, you know." Daniel smiled, a genuine smile that showed more relief than happiness. "I understand perfectly, Lisa," he said, reaching out his hand to her. "And I'm not going anywhere." Lisa looked at his hand, and for a moment, thought of everything she had faced to get there. From the pain and betrayal to her rediscovery and new beginning. She took Daniel's hand and felt a weight lift from her shoulders, as if she had finally allowed herself to accept that she was ready to live something new. Months later, Lisa and Daniel were still together, building a relationship based on trust and mutual understanding. Photography remained a significant part of Lisa's life, and she was working on new projects, now exploring stories of resilience and new beginnings. She felt these narratives mirrored her own journey, and through telling them, she connected even more deeply with herself. One sunny morning, as they walked through Zilker Park, the same place where Lisa had said goodbye to Ethan, she and Daniel stopped to take a picture. Daniel took Lisa's camera and encouraged her to be the subject this time. Lisa hesitated but agreed, smiling slightly. Capturing the new beginning, she joked as Daniel adjusted the focus. "Capturing the present," he replied with a sincere tone. As she looked at Daniel through the lens, Lisa realized how far she had come. She was living a new chapter where the scars of the past were not erased but transformed into stories of resilience and strength. She knew new challenges would come, but she was ready to face them, for she had learned to be true to herself. When Daniel took the picture, Lisa knew that, for the first time, she was at peace with the person she saw in the image. She was at peace with her journey. The photography exhibition had been a turning point for Lisa. Over the months, she continued to grow, finding a renewed sense of self and purpose. But as much as she embraced her present, Lisa knew that new challenges could always appear. She wasn't afraid of them anymore. Instead, she felt ready to face whatever came her way. Lisa's relationship with Daniel continued to evolve in a way that was both steady and gentle. Their connection deepened, but it wasn't rushed or forced. They were building something real, something that wasn't a bandage over old wounds, but a foundation built with patience and honesty. Lisa often thought about how different her relationship with Daniel was from what she had experienced with Ethan. There was no pretense, no facade, just two people who understood each other's scars and gave space for healing. One day, Daniel invited Lisa to spend a weekend in Marfa, the town where she had taken her soul-searching trip with Grace months earlier. He knew it held special significance for her, and she appreciated his sensitivity to her journey. They stayed in a small artsy inn and spent their days exploring the town and its vast desert surroundings. During a sunset walk through Marfa's wide-open plains, Lisa stopped and looked at the horizon. She felt the weight of the past slowly dissolving with every breath of fresh desert air. She turned to Daniel, who was watching her with the same gentle expression he had when they first met. "This place helped me start over," she said quietly, as if speaking more to herself than to him. "It's where I realized I didn't have to be defined by what happened to me." Daniel smiled, understanding the depth of her words. "And now?" he asked, his voice steady. "Now," Lisa replied, taking a deep breath, "I feel like I'm finally free to live my life without carrying all of that with me." She wasn't saying that the pain was gone completely, only that she had learned to live with it in a healthier way. She had accepted that it was part of her, but it didn't have to control her. When they returned to Austin, Lisa felt a new sense of clarity about what she wanted in her life. She continued working on new photography projects, exploring themes of resilience, self-discovery, and healing. Her work was gaining recognition not just because of her technical skill, but because her photos carried authenticity and emotion, something deeply connected to her own experiences. One day, she received an unexpected call from a local gallery owner who had seen her exhibition. He offered her the opportunity to hold another solo show, this time focused on resilience and transformation. The gallery owner suggested that she share her personal story through this series, encouraging her to explore the themes she had been working on in a deeper and more personal way. Initially, Lisa hesitated. Her previous exhibition had been about finding closure, but this one would mean opening up to an even more vulnerable space. However, the idea intrigued her. She realized that telling her story through her work could be a way to complete her journey, turning her pain into something meaningful, not just for herself but for others who might be facing similar challenges. She decided to go for it. Lisa spent the next few months immersed in preparing for the exhibition. She revisited the places and people that had been part of her journey. Zilker Park, where she had confronted Ethan. The neighborhood she had photographed, now revitalized but still holding echoes of the past. And even Marfa, where she captured new scenes that reflected her inner transformation. Each photo was paired with a brief note, sharing the story behind it and how it connected to her healing. Daniel stood by her side throughout the entire process, supporting her without trying to take over or solve her problems. He listened when she needed to vent, encouraged her when she felt uncertain, and gave her space when she needed to be alone with her thoughts. Lisa began to realize that, in building this new life, she wasn't just finding peace with her past. She was finding trust in herself and in those she allowed into her present. On the night of the exhibition, the gallery was filled with visitors. Grace was there, of course, along with several of Lisa's new friends and colleagues from the local newspaper. Lisa's mother was there too, her eyes reflecting pride and relief. Daniel stood at the back of the room, quietly watching as Lisa welcomed guests and answered questions about her work. As Lisa walked through the gallery, looking at the photos and the people's reactions to them, she felt a mix of emotions. Each image held a piece of her journey, and each visitor connected with a different aspect of her story. She knew that opening herself up in this way wasn't easy, but it was worth it to feel the authenticity of the life she was building. At one point, Lisa approached Daniel, who had been speaking to Grace. "How does it feel to see yourself through your own journey?" he asked her, smiling. "It feels liberating," Lisa replied. "For the first time, I'm not afraid of looking back. I'm not afraid of letting people see the real me." Daniel nodded, his expression filled with admiration. "You've come a long way," he said softly. "And I'm just getting started," Lisa replied, a smile spreading across her face. Years passed, and Lisa continued to pursue her photography with passion. She had learned to accept the ups and downs of life, embracing the uncertainties that came with it. Her relationship with Daniel grew stronger, rooted in trust and mutual respect. They traveled together, exploring new places and capturing their stories through Lisa's lens. But even as life moved forward, Lisa never forgot the lessons she had learned from her past. She carried them not as burdens, but as reminders of her resilience and growth. Her journey wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that made all the difference. One day, while organizing old photographs in her studio, Lisa found a picture she had taken of herself years ago. A reflection in a cafe window, her face uncertain, searching for answers. She placed it beside a new photo of herself that Daniel had taken. This time, confident, smiling, looking directly at the camera. It was a reminder of who she had been and who she had become. And as she looked at the two photos side by side, Lisa felt an overwhelming sense of peace. She had found her way back to herself.